Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Last week we had a good look at the GT3B radio and modified it to run different firmware, letting us use up to 8 channels and some extra options on how we can control them. Since it's not very interesting just doing a bench test with some servos, we need a truck to install the radio in. The best test case I have is the Tamiya high lift with its 3-speed gearbox. Often a tripping point if you don't want to mess around with an aircraft radio and want to use a pistol grip. To get around the limitations of my other radios, I made up some electronics that let me shift gears using the usual 2-position third channel, but it was a bit of a pain to use. And of course with that installed, there's no way to have control of a lighting system. I needed more channels. That takes us nicely onto the receivers. The first is the HK GT2RX, the same as the standard 3-channel FlySky radio. It's the one that's included with the handset and the only one really listed as compatible. But with the extra channels we can use the HK T6A V2. This one's got 6 channels. And then we have the monster Turnigy 9X8C V2 and it's 8 channels. Nice! For the high lift though, we're going to want to use the 6-channel receiver. The usual steering and throttle, the gears makes 3, leaving us with 3 more for other gadgets. Could be a winch, lights, or whatever else you can find to connect. Binding the radios works just the same way as the 3-channel one. Connect the binding plug to the bind port, or in the case of the 6-channel, the bat port. Connect some power to a free port. I'm just using a 4-cell receiver pack, but you could connect up an ESC. You should see an LED blinking if it's in bind mode. Hold the bind button on the transmitter and turn it on. The LED on the receiver should go solid if it's been a success. Then disconnect everything from the receiver, rig it up in a model, or for a test connect up a servo and some power. Turn the transmitter off and on to exit its bind mode, and with any luck it should all be working. Okay, time to fit it to the truck. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. I'm going to use some sticky battle velcro to hold it on, simple but effective. The antenna won't go up the inside of the usual antenna tube due to the great big red lump at the end. I still want to get the antenna up high and vertical though. Easiest solution, a zip tie. No need to get fancy. Just need to snug it up so we don't damage whatever lies under the red heat shrink. Looks nice and tidy. Next, the gear shift servo. I'm going to connect it and power to the receiver. We don't need the steering and ESC for this. And now the fun bit, setting up the transmitter so we can use the 3 speeds. To get to the key mapping we need to click the scroll wheel, scroll to rev and do a long press. I want to use the channel 3 trim rocker, which is shown as 3. A short press selects it. Now we can select what we want it to do, in this case channel 3 or CH3. Another short press and we can choose what type of button we want. We want NL, no long keys. We only want to do anything on a short press. Click the wheel again and we get the V. This is the step, or how far the servo moves with each button press. It seems to be some sort of percentage, so we want to set it to 100. Which should give us -100, 0 and +100, which is the 3 steps we need. Another short click and we can reverse it. I'm going to leave this as 0. The last option is opposite reset. Well, we don't need that here, and trying to explain it without servos moving around could be tricky, so I'm not going to. Another click and we're back at the key mapping menu. Hit end a couple of times and we're done with the basic setup. Since the servo will almost certainly not be able to move its full swing without binding, we need to reduce the endpoints before we power it up just to be safe. Easy enough to do. Highlight E point and do a short press, scroll to channel 3, another short press, and turn it down to 10 or so. To get to the other end you need to click the original 3-channel button. A little bit counterintuitive, but it does the job, and set that to something small as well. I'm going to have to pause the video here for a second or two as I missed out a bit of the recording. I'll pop up some random video for me to talk over so you're not just staring at the chassis. Okay, you can exit the menu now by hitting the end button a couple of times, then you can go ahead and turn on the receiver. The servo should jump to its midpoint, Ideally, you want to mechanically adjust the servo arm and push rod so the gearbox is nicely seated in second gear. If you disconnect the linkage, the rod that goes into the gearbox should spring to the right position for second. You may need to rock the wheels a bit if the clutches don't want to engage. You need the centered servo to hook up where the rod is in its current position. Adjust the length of the linkage just so it's bang on. Right, head back to the endpoint adjustment and back to the main feature. Now we can slowly increase the endpoints. We want the gearbox rod to move as far in and out as it can without binding. If you do see the servo straining before the rod is all the way in or out, give the wheels a spin to get the clutches to engage. Set up both first and third and we're ready for a test. I should probably mention, don't just copy my numbers, especially if you're running the shift servo up front in the stock location. The chances are yours won't be the same. Right, with the steering and shift servos plugged in and the ESC, get the wheels off the ground just on the off chance it makes a break for it. Okay, here we go. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like the shifts are nice and positive. The servo isn't straining. Nice. Should probably rename the model now too, since M00 looks like a cow using leet speak. I think 350 is the best we can do with 3 characters. Yep, that'll do. So that's the basic setup. Using 3 channels we have a running high lift. But we now have 6 channels, and I don't think we can end the video without using at least one of the extras, just to show that even with a simple setup, more than 3 channels is very useful. A while ago we did a couple of videos on LEDs. One of them looked at using a small processor to control them based on a servo channel. The little board has been collecting dust ever since, so this seems like a good time to put it to use, at least until I can put something together a bit more advanced. I've stuck it to the radio tray with some Velcro and made a new wiring harness. One lead plugs into the receiver where it gets power and signal. I fitted 2 pairs of red LEDs at the rear which connect to the board. There's another 2 pairs of white LEDs in the headlights. They go to a 2-pin connector. I'm using the channel 3 button on the transmitter. It's set up to toggle between 2 positions on channel 4. With a servo hooked up you can see what it does. Nothing special. The controller was designed to work with a common 2-position switch. The board just uses a signal that normally goes to the servo to decide if the power to the LED should be on or off. If I remove the servo and hook up the LED controller, spin the truck around so you can see the lights, there we have it. 4 channels usefully employed. Pretty neat I think, considering almost all car radios top out at 3 channels. While I put the cab on, I'll tell you about the next step for this model. I'm planning on having a light setup not unlike what's on the Pajero, with working brake and reversing lights. This time, however, I'm hoping to have more modes available so it will fit with the lighting setup of many vehicles. I'm also hoping to get this version on a proper PCB instead of the cobbled together prototypes I normally make at home. The first advantage is it will be a lot smaller. The second is, it should be quite possible to populate the board quickly enough that they'd be worth selling. If it all works out, we could have our first RC Mojo product on sale. Exciting stuff I think. It's still going to take a couple of months before we get there though, assuming nothing goes wrong of course. I have a spec sheet now that I'm confident does what we need it to. Just got to make the schematic, design a PCB, get a test batch made, write some software, build one, and do lots of testing. Anyway, that'll do for this video. Thanks for watching. A like is always much appreciated. If you want to see what happens next with RC Mojo, do please subscribe. It is free after all. Bye guys.